Welcome to People Potential with Amanda. Thank you for listening in today. I'm your host, Amanda Flasing, and I'll be bringing on various experts to discuss empowering individuals and organizations to achieve their full potential. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of People Potential with Amanda. Today's guest is Andrew Bartlow. He's a growth company advisor and a former chief people officer with over 25 years of industry experience. He's also the author of Scaling for Success, People Priorities for High Growth Organizations, and the founder of a really interesting new professional development program called People Leader Accelerator. Welcome, Andrew, and thanks for being here.
Amanda, thank you so much.
So, Andrew, let's just start with tell me a bit about yourself. And then the second part of that is something fun that you're working on right now. What's your latest project?
Sure. Well, and thank you so much for the kind introduction. You covered a lot of the highlights. I'm an HR guy. I've been doing this work for 25 years now at companies very large to very small, from Pepsi, GE, Wells Fargo, to a bunch of startups that were very small that most people have never heard of, and had a capstone experience being the chief HR officer of a now public company that's now known as Invitation Homes. So I pulled my golden parachute a few years ago and wrote my bucket list book, Scaling for Success. Thanks for the plug. And for the past few years, I've been consulting, advising, and mentoring other HR leaders, people that may be earlier in their career, helping them to navigate the challenges of this often very lonely job.
Absolutely. And I think particularly lonely and challenging, as we've seen over the last 2 years. There are all kinds of stats coming up about, burnout rates and the challenges with the pandemic, and then return to office, hybrid or flexibility, and what to do, how to listen to employees, but who's listening to our HR leaders. And that is where you come in. So what's your latest project? I think I alluded to People Leader Accelerator. Is this the latest and greatest thing? And just tell me a bit about People Leader Accelerator.
Yeah, I refer to it as PLA. It's a mouthful and a really long web domain address. So PLA is the best, I'm very biased, the best professional development program for HR leaders. I created it on the back end of writing my book, which is intended for HR people and help them focus on what really matters to organizations. I found through my career and hiring a bunch of HR people for my team and working alongside a bunch of people in this function, that a lot of people just fall into HR. Maybe they got there through the recruiting path, where they were recruiters that gradually started taking on more traditional human resources roles. Maybe they were an outstanding project manager or office manager. There are very few people that seem to be doing this work that went to school for it and had dedicated training and skill building. And I think there are a lot of people that are very smart, that are incredibly hardworking, that only have some of the basic foundational training, and SHRM doesn't cut it. And these university-based certificate programs, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. Berkeley has something. Stanford has, bits and pieces. Lots of different universities offer stuff, but it's university learning, not real world practical application. So People Leader Accelerator is intended to provide the basics, and actually beyond the basics. It's about how to be effective as an HR professional, what really matters, how to apply that. I have partners and co-faculty members. Together, we've been the head of the function 15 plus times at different companies. And we have a PhD management professor who is appointed at the top management program in all of Europe. So, we really marry the research-backed basics with practical application, and nobody else is doing that. It's sad, but
I
somebody
don't know
needs to do
why.
it. Yeah, so we're going to do it.
Exactly. That sounds incredible. I know, like for myself personally, I attend all kinds of things for B2B marketing, because B2B SaaS marketing is also not something that you can learn in school, although we have a lot more marketing and advertising curriculum, I would say. But it's kinds of like practical acceleration programs are so valuable, and I've seen huge benefits myself. So highly recommend. I'm a big fan. So in your experience, what does this great HR leader look like? And the second part of that is, how can HR leaders be more strategic to have a seat at the exec table to be that great HR leader?
Yeah. Well, I think you posed the question very well, in that, what does a great HR leader look like? Is someone that has a seat at the table, and they have that seat at the table because they are strategic. Now, let's unpack that a little bit. What does it mean to be strategic? How do you get the seat at the table? It's not through title. It's not through reporting structure. Plenty of people are in a chief people officer role, chief HR officer, senior VP, whatever. Plenty of people report to a CEO, president, C-suite executive. And maybe they're in the meetings, but they're not nearly as influential or impactful as they could be. And so here's the key. The key is work on the right things. And that sounds very, very basic.
I want to say, what are those things?
Yeah, well, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a checklist that you could just hand to different organizations? You're a consumer packaged goods manufacturer, or you're a technology SaaS startup at Series B institutional funding, and boy, plenty of venture capital companies have some of those playbooks that they hand around. The answer, though, is it depends. What's most important depends. And the way to identify that for your organization is to start, think of it like a waterfall. Start with, what are the most important goals and priorities for your organization? Okay, what are those? If you're not clear on those, talk to your C-suite, look at your latest investor pitch deck, look at the latest board deck, look at your latest earnings release. Like, shouldn't be hard to find. You're hopefully talking about these things at all hands. So get really clear on what the top few priorities are for the organization, and then line up your HR priorities with those company level priorities. And again, sounds simple, but in practice, it happens very rarely. We are so often, as a function, focused on HR-centric things, doing employee-friendly activities, offering employee-friendly programs for the general purpose of supporting employees, without providing nearly a direct enough linkage between what's most important to the organization and what we're working on. And we'll get much more attention, much more support, much easier resourcing being allocated to us if we're very, very clear, without big logic leaps, around what we're working on and how that directly contributes to what's most important to the work.
Absolutely. And where do numbers and data and KPIs come in here? And that's where I see a bit of a gap in general in the HR field or in different people that I've worked with. How can you do in the program? Do you have something related to, like, how can you bring more data to the table to support your strategic seat and support the vision and the initiatives that you're bringing forward?
Yeah, I'd say that data and analytics are a tool. It helps you figure out whether you're winning or losing and how things are going, but data by itself is not inherently useful. So, again, it starts with, what's the right data? What are you trying to accomplish? And how are you measuring progress along the way? So, so many people in our program and beyond are asking, okay, what should be on our dashboard? The answer is it depends. Or do you want to track turnover? Do you want to track headcount growth? Do you want to track labor cost? How about your temp labor? How about your temp to hire expenses? Employee sentiment. Lots and lots of different metrics you could look at. But what's important for your org is what's important for your org. So just make those critical decisions along the way. Just immediately before recording this discussion, I was on a Zoom with two of my partners who are analytics experts, Dr. Brad Harris and Dr. Pat Downs. Pat's at University of Kansas or KU, the Jayhawks. And Brad is headed to Paris for his HEC professorship. And they built out an analytics program for People Leader Accelerator. And we have some great content there, but it all kind of boils down to figure out what's most important and track that.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like I'm being a little long-winded on this answer, but I also feel like HR professionals often shortchange themselves and too quickly and too flippantly will use the phrase, I'm not good with numbers. I'm a people person, not a financial person. And boy, please do yourself and everyone else that does this work a favor and use other words. Be curious, educate yourself. You don't need to be an MBA, CFO level financial expert to understand, is your company trying to grow revenue? What are you doing to support that? Is your company trying to cut costs? What are you doing to support that? You don't have to have advanced financial analysis skills to be able to draw some of those clear linkages.
Absolutely. And I love that you have the people analytics portion being worked on as part of your program, because it is something that I think is so important. And absolutely, it's not just the data, it's what insights do you get and how is that tied to your objectives?
Yeah.
So in your experience then, and I don't know if it will be related to this people analytics or completely different, but what do most HR leaders struggle with?
Most HR leaders struggle with trying to do too much.
Okay. In
this role, you have asks and expectations just rained down upon you from all angles, from employee base that wants to know what their career path looks like, or wants compensation increases, or wants performance feedback, from the management team that wants employee data or wants turnover to be reduced or wants engagement to go up, from the board who wants to establish a great employer brand that is easier to grow and attract people, and then the broader community and social good purposes. That there's an endless number of things that an HR professional can work on and often tries to. And so this is one of the core tenets of the professional development work that I do, and that is get really clear on your priorities. Ruthlessly prioritize. You can move 30 things an inch or 3 things a mile. So clarity and alignment of purpose are powerful, powerful tools. And boy, I think it's Stephen Covey's, oldie but goodie book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about big rocks. Yeah. And if you're not clear what your big rocks are, you'll never get to them. All the gravel and sand of emails and just-in-time requests will fill up your bowl and fill up your life. But if you identify those big rocks for your organization and for your HR function, and you put your time there first and foremost, you're so much more likely to be more impactful and more influential.
Absolutely. I'm also a fan of the rocks and the pebbles, and I actually have time in my calendar for my quarterly big rocks, and then you have different stones and pebbles. And so my team asks sometimes, is it okay if we schedule some time within your pebble section? I said, yes, but don't touch my big rocks.
Love it.
So putting that into practice, but I think it's That struggle is real, not only for HR leaders, but for many leaders where you have so many projects and it's that ruthless prioritization. It has to be constantly revisited because so quickly your email can become someone else's to-do list. Everything just keeps snowballing. So it's keeping it under control with regular reviews, I find has helped, but it's still a work in progress for me.
Well, hey, kudos to you for being intentional and planning out the time for the most important things. I'd suggest that HR professionals are probably more susceptible to these requests coming down and being pulled in 1,000 different directions, in large part because we tend to be to view ourselves as being in a helping profession. So many people are in human resources because of our humanistic views. We want to help people. We want to make people happy. We want to have a more favorable workplace and world. And so with that, if someone asks for something, we very much want to try to deliver. And it can be counterintuitive, contradictory to our soul to say no or not yet. But if you want to be impactful, if you want to be influential, if you really want to be strategic and have a seat at the table, you got to make some choices. And that means work on the most important things first.
Sounds like a lot of inner work as well as, so tips of here are the processes. You really have to wrap your mind around that and keep practicing. Like it's hard to say no if you're a very empathetic person. So it's great that you're talking about it, bringing it up, and I'm sure you have support systems or strategies for people taking the course. So let's take a bit of a left turn, still talking about the program, but you've developed a niche specifically tailored to help leaders at high growth companies. So why this specific niche? What drew you to this? Why are you so passionate about high growth companies that are scaling up?
Yeah. Well, I think this is the donut hole. This is the missing link. I've seen decades of management research and popular business books about the giant companies. And we all know the stories of Google and Tesla and Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great. Most of those companies are no longer great, by the way. That work tends to get dated quickly. Most management research is based in enterprise giant organizations. It's covered. Lots of good foundation. Lots of anecdotal stuff exists on popular B2C technology companies that are leading the charge on progressive practices that it seems like everybody wants to emulate without really paying attention to their specific context. Or was Google great because the founders interviewed every single person up until 5,000 employees? Or was Google great because they had an amazing search engine that nobody else could build, right? They may have been successful in spite of some awkward management practices. Anyway, my point is that there's this gap in research, in education, around these small and mid-sized businesses that are going through times of change and evolution. That is central to the growth of worldwide and American industry, and who will be the next big success story. And I live out here in the San Francisco Bay Area, the cradle of technology startups, and I've seen so many organizations stumble and struggle through growth, in part because they're applying practices that worked for 1970s Intel, like OKRs, or ideas that arguably worked for Zappos in their call center environment that are very different in their own contexts. So I focus on high growth because I think nobody else is effectively addressing it. It's all been kind of anecdotal rather than really practical and research-backed foundation support. And because I'm in the middle of it here in the Bay, and because I find that there are a large number of HR professionals that are relatively early in their career that are leading those functions that I think I can help. And so that's where I get my personal satisfaction nowadays. I've done this work for a long time, and I really get a lot of gratification out of helping people that are following the path that I followed. And maybe I can help them navigate it a little bit more gracefully.
I'm confident you can. And it sounds like you've really found this perfect intersection of your experience, of an opportunity and a need in the market, and being able to fulfill your own personal mission of helping people and having the most impact that you possibly can. So we'll share in the show notes about People Leader Accelerator, or PLA, so people will be able to check that out. But Andrew, to wrap this up, let's go to my signature question. So how do you unlock your potential? And this could be in your personal life, in your business life, whatever you would like to share.
I think it has to do, what do I personally do? I am thoughtful and intentional about my goal setting. What do I want to accomplish? And I write it down. I've got a whiteboard just to one side of me, and I've got a sticker, a cork board right in front of me. And I have a number of different long-term goals and to-dos where I'm clear about what I'm trying to accomplish. I have my short list, and it is clearly visible, so I'm constantly reminded of those things. So it goes back to the big rocks. I do time blocking as well. And so that unlocks my potential, so I don't get lost in the chaos of the day-to-day.
Love that. Thanks for sharing. And that certainly appeals to me. I think we have that in common with the goal setting as a motivator. So thank you so much for joining me today, Andrew. I appreciate you being here.
Amanda, thank you. Really a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on People Potential with Amanda. I appreciate each and every single listen and view. If you've enjoyed this content, it would really mean the world if you could leave us a 5-star review. This will make a huge impact in increasing the visibility of this podcast, on top of brightening the day of a few people here at Success Finder who work really hard behind the scenes to make this all happen. We're continuously working on new episodes, so be sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss a thing. Until next time, stay curious.